depends.
Yeah, right. Tell me about it. It depends.
So getting changed by other people can feel a little bit like this, right? Gotta be careful with that. So here's my recommendation. Nobody likes being convinced, right? So how the heck can we change things if people don't like being convinced? Well, here's the deal. If you change yourself first, sometimes other people will change as a response. Has anybody experienced that? Oh, a lot. Why are you talking? Yeah, because you're the only person you can really control. And even that, barely. I saw about a third of you here didn't even manage that. So, this is the guy I bumped into about a week ago, 2 weeks ago at a conference. He said, hey, Henrik, I heard this talk. I did this talk once before. I admit it's not a unique keynote. I apologize, I admit. I did it once before. And he said, he came back to me and said, hey, I saw your keynote. And then I changed myself. I don't remember what he changed. And after that, my team also changed.
Thanks.
Wow. So that was at least one example of things working. So, here's an example. How do you get a 6-year-old to clean his room? And this is a true story. Everything today is actually a true story.
Start cleaning yours.
What?
Start cleaning yours.
Start cleaning my own room, yeah. Cute, yeah. So, how do you get a 6-year-old to clean his room? Well, there's some bad strategies. A lot of you are parents, right? As we saw today. You have to clean up your room now or else. It might work once, but it's not a very good long-term strategy. I'll give you ice cream if you clean your room. Or, look, I cleaned your room for you. I'm a servant leader. Oh, wait a second. Or is that a servant leadership?
Scrum Master.
Scrum Master.
No, it's more room master.
So these are strategies that I'll try, and they're all kind of sort of not really that great. But I tried one different thing and it worked so well that I have to tell you about it. Because change worked and it's stuck for like 2 years now and counting.
You really asked your boss.
I thought about why do I care about clean room? Well, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? So what is it really? I thought it's really about teaching him to take responsibility. Okay. But why? So he enjoys cleaning it himself without me having to meddle. Okay, but why? This is like the 5 whys, but doesn't so that I save time. Okay, there's a selfish reason there. So that he learns a skill for life. It's useful to be able to keep, be able to sort out your own stuff. It's a good skill. So first I've changed myself. Okay, let's stop this authority mode stuff and get into coach mode. So what do coaches do? Well, what coaches don't do is coaches don't force people. At least not good coaches. They don't force people to do anything, and they don't do people's work for them, right? So I thought of something. There's something called getting things done. Nice little methodology. I stole a little bit from that, and from some other places. And I asked him, so what's it like having a clean room? Do you remember last time you had a really clean room? He's like, yeah, it was really nice. We talked about what it's like to have a clean room. I don't lose things, I'm not stepping on things, and there's space to play. We kind of envisioned that state. Great! And what do you think of your room right now? It's like, oh, it's a mess, just a total mess, and talk about how it's not fun to be in my room right now. So now we kind of have a business case forming here, right? But there also needs to be a concrete path. So I asked them, this thing right here, what's that? They picked up a piece of garbage. Do you want that? It's like, no. So where do you want it to live? If you have this beautifully clean room, where would this thing be? Goes and puts it in the garbage. What about this thing right here? What's that? Pen. In your nice and clean room, where would this live? And he's like, it would live in this drawer right here. Right, we just did that over and over and over again. Just from one little spot on the floor. And after about 15 minutes, there was a nice clean spot on the floor, about a half square meter. Look, right here, it's nice and clean. But it's progress, it's visible progress. He can see it too. Look, we're getting somewhere. And then I left. He came back after about an hour or two, and I was amazed. He had cleaned up pretty much the whole room. And he was even starting to coach his sisters and brothers. Wouldn't you like your room to be as clean as mine? Right? That thing there. Where does that live? And I'm like, amazing. This doesn't always work. It hasn't worked for all of my kids, but it really worked for him. And I think the reason was because I think he wanted it clean. He just didn't really see the path, right? It was like an overwhelming mess. So once he learned the technique of keeping a clean room, and this is pretty much getting things done, clear the inbox process, right? It works for him. And even now, like years later, we have almost problems with this. Come on, son, dinner's getting cold. Oh, I'm not finished color sorting my socks. Very interesting. So out of this, we can kind of distill a model for change. And I definitely did not invent this. This is just a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of existing models from Lean and systems thinking and a whole bunch of stuff. I've simplified it into just this one picture.
Only black socks?
What?
Only black socks?
Can't hear you.
From now, only black socks?
From now, only black socks. Good idea. Thank you. I'll write that. You must be a coach. Right. So here, destination. What is this place we want to get to after the change, right? Make that clear. And why, so for example, agile, right? Look at the Spanish version of there's that. and why would anybody want to go there? Why would I want to be there? Be clear about the motive, right? Not just the place, but the motive. And then understand, where am I right now then? Right? It's hard to get to someplace else if you don't know where the heck you are right now. It's not enough, you need a concrete step to make this realistic. What is a small step I can take that's very concrete will get me in that direction? And how will I know if I'm actually getting it? To keep the motivation up, we need feedback. So using this as a basic model, I'll give you a whole bunch of examples, probably more than you'll remember, but some of them will be distinct. And if not, you can check the slides, which are already up on my blog. I put them up 20 minutes ago.
Thank you.
Okay. This model is useful for diagnosing the resistance. Is it because them over there don't understand this place we're going? They don't understand what Agile is, for example? Maybe they misunderstood it. Well, Agile means no documentation, and we don't want to go there. Maybe they misunderstood. Or maybe they do know exactly what it is, but they don't want to go there. Maybe I'm a manager. I like to have control, and this will take away some of my control, and that's important. Maybe. Or maybe I'm a manager sitting in a room and not really seeing what's going on out there. I just have some nice Gantt charts and some nice organizational charts, and everything looks fine and dandy. Like, we're already here. We're already Agile or something, right? I don't even understand the current situation. Could be. Or maybe resistance is because, yes, I know what that is, and yes, I want to go there, and no, I don't like my current situation, but I don't see a path. I don't see any concrete way to get there. That's when you hear things like, well, yes, Henrik, that sounds great in theory, but in real life, well, I'm sure some of you have heard that one too. Sounds great in theory. Or maybe we just lose steam because we can't see progress, and that may cause resistance. Yeah, we've been doing Scrum for a while now, and it's not really changed anything, and then we slowly glide back because of organizational muscle memory. So let's talk a little bit about resistance. You can save a lot of time by just choosing your battles, right? Find the path of least resistance. So figure out who else is affected by this change, whatever it is you want to do. Who is affected by it? And be clear about why would they want to change. What's in it for them? Because there better be something in it for them or it's going to be very hard. And the path is very different depending on where we're coming from. I'm using Agile Lean as an example, but the change model is pretty applicable in many contexts. But suppose we want to kind of go Agile Lean, and if we are the big waterfall company, then that journey looks in one way, but if we are the small startup company with chaos growth pain, it's a very different journey. How many of you have done that journey, the big waterfall company journey? Right? So you kind of release more often, less documentation, less roles, right? Bring people closer together. But how many of you have done that journey? Different, right? It might even, to some people, feel like we're adding bureaucracy, we're adding meetings, we're releasing more seldom. Wow, just a different journey. Another thing to take into account to lessen the resistance is to think about the length and width of the path. And now that's very, very vague, so let's get more concrete. Here's Agile Lean. One model is Big Bang, right? I think Salesforce did a Big Bang. No, how many of you have done a Big Bang transition? Just all out, change everything at once. That's a model. It's a risky model, but it's a model. Right? Here's another one, incremental. Let's say the whole organization will start introducing retrospectives only. And the next we start introducing maybe sprints. We start introducing the product owner role. So we're kind of stepping slowly forward in this incremental way. Or another model is the pilot model. We just extract one small part of the organization and say, you are an Agile team. We give them completely different circumstances. And we really try out Agile in this limited environment. And if that works out really well, the resistance might be reduced here, because now they've seen that, well, they made the journey and they survived. Maybe we can make the journey and maybe we'll survive. Has anybody done this pilot journey? Right? Just different models. But some may generate more or less resistance, right? Now here's the thing I bump into a lot. This notion of structured change. I'm sure some of you recognize this. We're the lean implementation team. Right? Okay, so what do you do? Well, we have a Kaizen meeting every month, and we identify improvements. If any of you are on this team, I'm sorry for insulting you right now. It's just I have to keep you awake this late. Here's our improvement backlog. Okay, great, lots of good ideas. But how many have actually been implemented? And of course, you all know the answer to this. Well, none, but people don't really seem to have time. But they're really good changes, really good ideas. Has anybody seen this? Right? It doesn't have to be a lean implementation team, it can be the whatever implementation team. It happens when you tend to have this idea that change is just a thing you can organize like any project. Well, I find that change, when it really works, is a lot more chaotic. Here's a model that was proposed to me by a fellow named Don Reinerson, which you may know about, or met. He says this is what works best in his experience. Find combustible material in your local work area. By the way, this is a metaphor. Metaphor. I don't dare do this in the States, I'll get sued. Right? Set it on fire. Once you see flame, pour gasoline on them. Encourage multiple small fires to spread. The large fire will begin to spread itself. How many of you have seen this happen in terms of spreading something that's fiery like Agile? Yeah. Especially if you have support from the above. With support from the above and this wildfire spreading, it's a great combination. Right, so I've kind of touched upon this several times, the whole us and them problem. Those managers won't let us. Right? So we really like that. Okay, so go to the managers, talk about Agile. Do you want to go Agile? And they say, yeah, of course, this is great, this is just what we want. But the customers won't let us. And go to the customers, and guess what they say? Yeah, of course, this is exactly what we want, but those developers will never manage it. And this is the problem, it's us and them problem. There's a number of things, a number of solutions. One is, of course, if we can get everyone together at once. That's not always possible, but if possible, it's great, right? Everyone at once, an inspirational talk. Let me tell you about Agile, right? I'm not trying to force you to do it. We're not going to talk about how to do it. I just want to check out, is this something we all want to get to, if we could? Just to get that statement of intent, right? And then find out. Maybe if everybody can see everybody else saying, yeah, then that saves a lot of trouble. Now we all know that we want to get there, and that leaves the question of how. Right? And of course, if it's not possible to get everyone at once, we might at least try to capture the intent, right? So here's an example. I talked to a bunch of product managers at a government organization and asked them, so shall we move in this direction? Would you like to move in this direction? Right? Plus means yes, minus means no. Question mark means I don't know. And to my big surprise, it was 100% pluses. Everybody was like, yes, this is what we want. When I brought this over to the managers and to the developers, they were like, wow, we had no idea that they really would like this. So this is a way of blowing up the illusion of we can do it, but where they don't want to. And here's a general approach technique that I found to be very useful when it comes to triggering change. And that is kind of, what type of questions are we asking? Because if we ask questions in a certain way, we might actually create resistance. Here's a concrete example. We can't release software every iteration, right? Resistance. Why can't you do that? Now what's the problem with that question?
It creates defensive.
I'm going to get an answer, which is why they can't. And that's not really what I want. What I want is, I want to know if you could, would you want to, right? Well, yeah, maybe. And then what needs to happen to make it possible? So now I'm getting this person here to be my ally in finding solutions, instead of just being my antagonist and finding all possible reasons why it can't be done. So little things like how we phrase questions can sometimes make a huge difference. I think someone calls this the art of the possible, where it came from. Nice strategy. One of my favorite strategies when I don't really know what the heck else to do is just take whatever the current situation is and visualize it. Because that sometimes generates the proverbial oh shit moment that is needed to trigger change. So there's a number of techniques for that. This would maybe be, skip down. This is maybe one of the most familiar ones, task boards. Right? Just back up. This is Peter Sand. He has a nice quote about that. A new understanding, oh, this was an old book, so new at the time, understanding of the process of organizational change has emerged. It's not top-down or bottom-up, right? It's participated at all levels, aligned to a common understanding of the system. We all have the same picture of the system. Then we can start changing more effectively. And this is a very simple way to do that. Of course, not the whole system. This will show us part of the system, right? The team. And we can see things like dead sprints. Oh, look, this was what we said we'd be doing, but this is what we're doing, and our sprint is dead. We're not at all doing what we thought we would. Not that that necessarily is a problem, but it does show that whatever this plan was, it's really basically a lie, right? Good to show it. This scales quite nicely. This is a board. This is a 60-person project covering the flow from concept to production. And we have a whole bunch of columns here, and that column there breaks into 3 different teams that have their own scrum boards down here. All analog, all icky physical things, sticky notes you move around. It actually worked surprisingly well. And once we did this, it helped us see things, such as impediments. This feature is blocked because I'm waiting for a barcode reader. Everybody can see that. We talk about it every day. Or the biggest impediment we have is bad air. Bigger than any other impediment. That's useful information. The board itself can reveal things like, you see these people here, right? How do they look to you? Look cheerful, happy? Nah, they're worried, they're concerned. It was like this every day for a couple of weeks because of that. That's system test. You see? A whole crap load of things are stuck there. They're all working very hard, but it's getting done because system test is the bottleneck. And to make it painfully clear, we even measured velocity down here. Velocity is just how many cars reach done on Friday. So every Friday, just how much stuff is done. And guess what? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Everybody's working very hard, but all they're doing is stacking up stuff there. Nothing is actually coming out the other end of the pipe. This was very revealing. And everybody saw this pain every day. Managers, developers, testers, etc. This triggered change. It took a few weeks, but it really triggered change that we never would have managed without this clear visualization. So quite simple. And one thing that changed was they stopped building new features and started doing test automation for a while to alleviate the system test bottleneck. They did that without, I didn't even need to convince them, they could see that themselves. Class. Someone brought it to a workshop. Look, this class here, printed it out, and it's 7 meters. Right? We have to refactor this darn thing. It was a very easy business case to make. Everybody was like, yeah, we have to refactor it, let's just do it. It's a very easy way to make a case for something. We talked about measuring technical depth in meters. Meters of unnecessary code. Maybe it would be kilometers, right? We talked about it would be even cooler if we could measure it in kilograms, and then give everybody a backpack with that many kilograms they have to carry every day to start taking depth. Be imaginative, right? Visualize problems, things can change. Here's a classic, the burn-up chart. I'll still show it because this particular case it had an enormous effect on a project that was stuck. 230 points in the backlog. The team was delivering 10 points per sprint. Right? There's some math to be done here. Divide those to 23 sprints, and each sprint was 2 weeks, so that means, and in Sweden we have vacation sometimes, so that means over 1 year until release. Except that our project deadline was in about 2 months. So to make it even more clear, there's a timeline, and here's all the points. You can't see the numbers there, but it's from 0 to 250, right? That's these points. And that was a fixed scope promise. We have to get to here by that date, right? That was the promise. We have contract, signed everything. And of course, there's our progress one sprint, and there's our progress next sprint, and wait a sec here. Right? This is how to break a death march, right? That's the wishful thinking line, and these are the realistic lines, right? April is maybe the right month, but it's not the right year. This triggered a whole lot of change. That was not happening until we had this picture clear. Everybody can understand it. That was what we needed, right? So all this, like I told you before, it's kind of about triggering the ocean moment. Kind of like, oh, we have this feeling that something is wrong, but let's just keep working hard, maybe it'll sort itself out. That's not enough. You've got to make it painfully clear that something is going to go wrong, right? Very useful visualization. And it doesn't have to be, it can be very soft metrics, like in this case, just asking the people in the project, do you believe the current goal is achievable? And if they say, what's the goal? Then that's your biggest impediment, right? Already revealed your biggest impediment. You need a goal. But if you have some kind of goal, whatever it is, phrased in whatever way you want, do we believe we can achieve this, right? And it's using a scale here, put up sticky notes on a table, anonymous in this case, we can say, no, this is a death march. And we just detected it, and it took just 5 minutes. Because if our gut feel says we can't possibly make it, it doesn't matter really what the other data says. Right? Very useful to find out that there's a problem so that we can do something about it. Here's another example of a non-anonymous version. Just fist of 5 in front of the board, in front of the Kanban board or the project board or whatever you call it. Fist of 5. Will we make it? Is this achievable? Right? And in this case, we can see once again, no, we're not really going to make it. So that triggered change. And after a few weeks of fixing whatever problem it was, we'll see that that's more realistic now. And a few weeks before that deadline, all 5s, no problem. Very simple techniques for visualizing the problem, or the absence of problem. Right? So a little more visualization. Because it's so powerful. A very easy thing you can do is just ask the team or the project, what are the top 3 impediments, right? Very scrummish thing to do. What's your biggest impediment? But there's always too many, so you have to kind of prioritize. Top 3. Great. We had like things like we have no definition of done, or we're sitting too far apart. All these kind of mechanical things. Once those were solved, we have the definition of done of an impediment is when it's no longer top 3. So that's done enough. An impediment is done enough when it's not top 3. So then it moves away, something else bubbles up. Well, after a while, this bubbles up. Employees feel undervalued, unappreciated, and replaceable. Ooh. Problem. Everybody signed it. Wow, people basically hate the job, and some of the key people are looking for a new job. I had no idea. Just bubbled up through this. Very surprised. I had no idea what to do, but we visualized it. And we even added some metrics. Every week, people would put an X on this chart here for how did it feel to come to work this week. Right? 5 was great, 1 was I hated it. And you can see what it looks like, right? No good. This was a big aha and a big shock to the managers, but also to the people in the organization, because they thought, everybody was like, well, it's just me. I don't like this place, I'm going to find a new job. Now it turned into we. This is our problem. And hey, it's on the top 3 list. And everybody was mentally conditioned to, stuff on the top 3 list gets fixed. Right? It's just up to us to do it. So they did all these changes. Amazing number of pretty big changes in how they work in this organization. Pretty much once this realization came up that we are in deep trouble because of motivation. And we charted this, and over about 3 months, they went up to here. And it was not only a number, we could also see the difference. We could see that people are having fun at work. They're solving their problems. And maybe that's the most motivating thing you can do. Have a team that actually solves their own problems. Once again, these are techniques, they don't always work, they're not silver bullets, but I'm bringing them because at least once they have worked amazingly well. At least once. With all kinds of ideas, and then like, oh, but let's just go back to work, right? Because it's too difficult, but the ideas they come up with aren't perfect enough, or they're too difficult to change, or whatever. Here's a very, very simple technique that I found to be very useful. Get all the ideas on the table, right? Get them up, give them some letter or some name, and most importantly, include status quo as an option. Because status quo is the default option that's going to apply if you don't choose one of the other solutions, right? So status quo is just one option, changing nothing. Or changing that way, changing this way, changing that way, changing that way, right? This might be keep doing our current broken Scrum. This might be let's do Scrum properly. This might be let's try Kanban instead. This might be something else or whatever, right? And then get people up, and on a 5-point scale, everybody grades every option. So every person puts a check mark on every row somewhere, right? It just takes a couple of minutes, and now we can quickly see, look at that. Which option do you think is best out of these? Just looking at that. It's quite clear, right? It's an option that nobody hates, several people love, and everybody accepts. None of these options here are anywhere near them. Even though there are some that really love A, some that really hate it. It's just a very quick way to see that, well, given the options we now have, including status quo, F is the best one or the least crappy one we can think of. So we don't need to come up with a perfect change, we just need to come up with something that's better than what we have today. A little simple technique for that. Okay, time check here. So here's another one of those useful techniques. I don't know how many of you have tried value stream mapping in contexts, right? So this should be familiar. This is Taichi Ono, father of the Toyota production system. He says, all we're doing is looking at the timeline from the moment the customer gives us an order to the point when he collects cash. And we're reducing the timeline by reducing the non-value added weights. Right? Here's an example of this. This is the actual value stream map of a game company I was working with for quite a while back. And I'll just summarize it. This was a process of developing one game. One game goes through all these different steps before it gets done. And adding all the times here, it turns out it takes about 2 years to build one game. It's 25 months. And about 3 months of that is a value added time. So it takes 2 years to get three months of work done. Partially because we have these big queues here, right? The game gets stuck in that queue for 6 months. And then when the sound and graphics is done, it gets stuck there for another 6 months. And here are all the games that are already put in production, but now they're being a bottleneck, so it takes another 6 months there, right? I bring this up because this picture was what really changed everything. Because we had tried all kinds of things. But this picture, we drew it with a bunch of people, printed it out, walked around, showed it to people. Everybody who saw it, no matter what role, they were like, damn, we have to do something, right? That was the tipping point. Very interesting. What they did in this case was Scrum. They pulled out a team here, put them all in the same room, and said, your job is to build a game until it's done. Right? That's it. No handovers. And they did that in 3 to 4 months, over and over again. So then we extracted 2 or 3 more teams, and then closed this structure. It's a huge change. But it would not have happened if we didn't have this kind of simple visualization. That just took maybe 2 hours to draw. All right. I'm pumping in with a whole bunch of strategies. Are any of these useful so far? Hands up. Check any of these useful so far, yeah? And if you're tired, your brain is full, your head's exploding, don't worry. You don't have to remember all this, right? If at least one or two stick, that's perfectly fine with me. Okay. So, Machiavelli. People do not truly believe in new things unless they have actually had personal experience of them. I don't know, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of the case, though. So how do we use that? Well, here's some people saying, we don't think pair programming works, right? Well, they haven't tried it, they don't really know, but there's resistance there. So one way to soften that is to say, well, are you willing to try pair programming for one sprint? Try it, and if you don't like it, no one bother about it, no one has to do about it again. That's one way. Here was another real-life example. Developers here, testers here, a lot of problems because of the distance, even though it was only 10 meters. Are you willing to try sitting together one sprint? Never mind the organization chart, never mind who manages who. Just physically getting your chair up and you can be careful. So they tried that, and that changed everything because they really loved it. They could see the difference. But if I told them that this is going to be a permanent, formal change, it would have been harder. Thank you. All right. Sometimes being rational helps. Not always. We're not really rational people, most of us, but some people are. So sometimes it's just a matter of making a business case, right? Especially sometimes talking to managers who are kind of used to communicating sometimes in numbers. We'll increase by 50% if we sit together. This is a quite easy calculation to do if you A, measure velocity, which I believe most agile teams do by now, and just asking them, just give me your rough gut feel. If you were sitting together instead of spread across the building, what would your velocity have been the past 3 sprints? Just gut feel. Well, 50% higher. Okay. Now we walk over to the product owner and say, what would a 50% higher velocity mean for the release plan? The product owner may say, 2 months early. We would release 2 months earlier. Okay. Then we go to whoever it is who's not allowing us to sit together. Maybe facilities manager, whatever. We say, what is the cost of tearing down this wall so the team can sit together? Right? And maybe that calculation is enough to trigger a change if we have people who are working from a rational perspective. Right? Okay, I mentioned metrics a little bit, and metrics are boring, I know. Sometimes they're a little bit useful, as long as you don't overdo it. So some we touched upon. I'm going to compare these two, cycle time and velocity. And the reason why I bring up metrics is I talked about seeing progress, right? How do we know if we're actually changing anything for the better? How do we know? In a small organization, gut feel may be enough. Big organization, probably not. Okay, here's a personal story. Do we have time for that? Yeah, we do. This was me in 2010. Traveling a lot. And I was like, I like traveling, it's fun. But I don't like being away from my family. I have 4 small children, 1 here today. At one point I was home and I was talking to my wife, and we're like, if we could do whatever we want, what would we do? How many of you ask yourself this question sometimes? It's pretty useful. Yeah, that's the good old, if you won a lottery, you won 10 billion, whatever, what would you do? It's a good question. So we asked us this question, we're like, and I just been traveling quite a lot. Traveling is fun though, but it's not fun being away from kids. So what might we do? Yeah, travel with kids. Good one. Right? And I don't know where we came up with 6 months. We wanted it to be big. Let's do what if we did a big round-the-world trip with the whole family? Wouldn't that be cool? That would be really cool. And then we immediately realized we can't do that because of blah, blah, blah. Just obviously can't do that because, too many work commitments, we don't have time. What about schools? Right? Kids in school, we can't do it. We're traveling with 4 kids. That's a pain. We can't do that. What about my fans? What about the hamster or the house? Millions of reasons why we can't do it. And I thought about this whole, helping other companies change and the art of the possible and all that. So what if we just turn that around? If we could do it, would we want to do it? Talk to the kids, talk to each other? Yeah. Right. And if we did do it, when would we do it? Well, we could wait. Oh, wait a second. The more we wait, the harder it gets. Because we have 4 kids and they grow up and suddenly they're all in school. At that time, we only had 1 kid in school. If all kids in school, it gets even harder. So, oh, wait, we got to do it now. We either do it now or we wait 18 years until they're all out of school. So that's when we realized if we're going to do it, we just do it now. So agreement from family was kind of that number 1 that has to happen. And then a date constraint. If you don't just set a date, it's going to keep sliding. Just got to set a date and that's it. And adapt everything else around that date. So all these reasons for why we can't travel became our backlog for things we have to fix. This model became useful. I can't say we applied it on purpose at that time. I realized afterwards that I think we did. In physical form, here's our board at home. We put this board up immediately. There is the vision. We went to Google and all the kids together, we sat down and just looked for all these inspiring pictures. So what would traveling around the world for a long time, what would it mean? What would it look like? What would it feel like? So we found inspiring pictures written about. And then we started thinking about why do we want to travel? What is it we have to achieve from that we can't achieve at home? The date constraint is up here. This is the timeline. So we've got this little arrow moving. It's a daily reminder of time is moving and there's a date. We will leave on that date no matter what. That was fixed. So we were now in December and the magic date was, I think, October 1st. Right, and the next concrete next step is right up here. Right? You recognize this is the task board. So of course, this is the task board. Here's stuff we got to do, and there's the thing we're going to do next. That's what we're doing right now, and that's what we just did. We got done. 3 swim lanes. These things have to be done, or else we're probably not going to be able to do the trip. You know, we kind of need flight tickets. We need visas to get into the country we want to get to. Very important thing. These are things we really want to do, like rent out the house so we get some money. We also have to travel on a very low budget. Find a bit of work along the way, just a little bit. And these are the bonus things like, you know, clean up the basement and all that stuff that we all know will never get done, but has to be on the board. So we're on the agreement, we got the date constraint, and here was one of the examples of one of the bigger kind of less work. Doing everything, being involved in projects all over the place, traveling around, consulting and doing talks, all this stuff, right? You gotta get rid of it. I can't be traveling around the world if I have to stick my nose in my computer all the time and check email. So let's apply the change model. Target, less work, right? Motivation, why less work? Well, more family time, right? Gives me more time to organize a trip. Less need for internet access, which means we can go to more weird places. I don't need internet. Okay, fine, it's just clear. Current situation, well, yeah. Current situation, right? Work the world. But to make this a bit more concrete, I thought deep and hard for what is the concrete, if I can measure this somehow, what would the metric be? How would I know if I'm actually managing to produce work? It wasn't quite obvious. Finally, I found 2 kind of surrogate metrics that gave it an approximation. One is email hours, easy to measure. How many hours do I spend in email? I use a tool for that, just tell me. And client days, how many days am I not home? Easy to measure. And I can do that for this.